What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Worship Guitar Show. That Worship Guitar Show that streams live the first Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hello there. Hope you are doing great, and that if you're returning to the show, that it's been an awesome month since we last hung out. So taking a look at the various chat here, let's take a look and see who is joining us. And if you're so inclined, give us a holler and let us know where you are coming from this evening, or depending on your time zone, whatever time of day it may actually be. So, got a couple of things that I'm super excited to share, and it's also great to get a chance to check back in with everybody. And I'm anticipating some folks will be showing up sooner than later, but we are going to be going through a couple of things about full-range live response speakers from, dare I say, our friends at Celestion. I've been spending a bunch of time hanging out, doing some demo work for them, and in particular, all this crazy gear behind me. Those different cabinets and enclosures are loaded with these Celestion full-range, as they like to say, live response speakers that are perfect for amplifying your favorite modeler. And I know that, since we're, worship guys, we probably don't spend much time using modelers or playing in the box or any of that stuff. But what happens when we actually, want to take our favorite modeler and make it loud? So that's part of what we're going to be talking about. And Alan, what a pleasure. Hello, beautiful Alabama. Awesome. Great to see you as always. A tremendous, you are wind in the sails, my friend. How about that for an analogy? But it's true. And, encouragers are always, they kind of can't help but encourage. And that is a lovely, lovely, lovely thing. And there we go. Shane, what's going on, my man? Captain Scarlet. Tuesday edition, Gear Whisperer. I love that. Speaking of encouragement in terms of endearment. All right, well, let's just jump right in there. How about that? Let me make sure I've got the right windows in the front here, and perfect. So, as I mentioned a minute ago, I've been doing all this video work for the good folks over at Celestion, and kind of the silver lining of it is that for those of us that, do the church thing and do the modeling thing, but also like to have the ability to kind of go, I actually want to hear this thing without a couple of things jammed in my ears, my in-ears are somewhere over there. And honestly, if I'm really going to be totally frank with you, and hopefully not a bad influence, I really don't like playing with in-ears or headphones, whether it's on the platform or in the studio. I will do just about anything to hear the way my guitar is filling the space and interacting with the other musicians. And so long as it's not kind of like, how do I get this amp to volume such that it kind of gets into the sweet spot? Because Shane, I have heard the rumor, hey, Alan, you are the best. I have heard the rumor that, that sound guys or sound gals don't really like a lot of electric guitar. But if you can keep the volume down, it's always nice to have just a little bit of filler that you can always put, the amp off to the side of the platform, especially if you're not in an in-ear environment. Because, first of all, not every service is obviously in in-ears, and not every church actually is playing to a click or using tracks or using in-ears for that matter. And so, oh, that gets put up in the comments on screen there right now. So, there we go. So the interesting thing is there's some great fruit around that comment, which I'm gleefully going to pick out. First of all, one of the things I want to do is I want to play a couple of clips here real quick And there's a little bit of a lag in between what I believe is a second and third clip, but I'm just going to let them roll. So let's just jump right into this so we can hear some tones. Let's do this. Well, I guess there wasn't an awkward gap between the second and third clip. All right, so a variety of sounds. One of the things that I love to say and say it repeatedly is not everybody who plays at church just plays at church. And that doesn't mean, though, that some of the gear we use at church, like our go-to guitars or our go-to modelers, aren't having to do that full range of things. And if, we're somebody that navigates, whether it's between home rehearsal and church or some other sort of musical setting, whether it's writing songs or playing in a band or whatever the heck it is that's not just church music, we're kind of at this very strange crossroads where, well, I've got my church rig and then I got my mainstream rig. But, every time I play at church, they just want me to go direct into the PA, which is all groovy when that, rules are rules, right? We want to be submitted to whatever, but we're kind of left, how do I actually know, what this sounds like? And so the experience that I've had with these speakers has been great. There are lots of other great solutions out there. I am a fan of pretty much anything having to do with modeling and making modelers loud, but these speakers, what's great about them, and I will be honest, they have in fact paid me to demonstrate for them, but the thing is it's kind of like if you like candy and C's happens to pay you to do a C's candy ad, it's all gravy or something like that. That is to say, it's pretty sweet. So the neat thing is I've got a bunch of gear lying around that I was like, take out the stock speaker, put one of these in there. And there are two speakers there, the F12 X200 and the F12 M150 triple cone. They're really, really similar sounding, and you can stick them in a traditional combo, use the power amp in, because you're going to probably want to have a combo that's got an effects loop, because you ideally don't want to run your modeler into the front end of the preamp of whatever amplifier you're using, if you're using a combo or a head or something like that. Unless, of course, you're using the 4-cable or 5-cable method, etc. But, or I suppose even the 7-cable method if you're going to use two heads, right? But the point being is that then I've got over here, you can't see it, but a Seymour Duncan Power Stage 700 watt power amp. I reached out to the good folks at Seymour Duncan to try and get them to send me. There are two smaller power stages, one that's mono that I've got, the other one that's the stereo one, which I don't have. And I really want to grab that one. That is to say, the first one just has one output. And I'm a stereo fanatic, and I am firmly a strong endorser of that. So the whole thing, Alan, I love this thing about the back of the pant leg. So I do want to talk a little bit about strategically. The idea is like whether you're playing through an amp, whether you're playing through some sort of FR rig, it's really important that it's on axis with your ears, both left and right, and top and bottom as you're creating your sounds. And I know probably everybody here knows it, but the funny thing is, Alan, you made the exact point. I've recently purchased 4 more 412 cabinets, and I am a believer in feeling the back of my pant legs being forced into the back of my leg, because that is a wonderful feeling. And generally speaking, I prefer that to happen at leg level. But when I'm setting my tones, I obviously need to kind of make sure that I'm at ear level such that I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And so, and I had to, the funny thing is that it never ceases to amaze me when one opens their mind to being teachable by life's experience. I keep learning new lessons that I thought I'd already learned. A better part of a decade ago, I was playing at a small venue. Corridor of Power, always going Gary Moore on me. We're going to go there, huh? All right. So I was playing this gig, and I like to, when and where possible, step off the stage or the platform, whatever it is, and hear what my guitar sounds like front of house. And it just so happened I was using, which is not traditional of me these days, but using these 212 cabinets. And when I kind of got down on the floor and heard what was coming out of the 212 cabinets, I was like, right, I need to pull that high end back. And it's, the funny thing is sometimes you make mistakes that you shouldn't make because you know better. I was like, wow, and you just kind of go, yep, that was it. So for this range of demos, a lot of this stuff is directly pointed at me. As a matter of fact, if I scoot back about 1.5 feet and flip my chair around, I'm literally in the sweet spot, because you can see those guys are angled in a little bit, those upper boogie cabinets. So I'm in the sweet spot, all of that. But the other thing that's cool is where I am, I can hear it kind of behind me. That is to say, those 1960 A cabinets there are also A cabinets. And I was always a big fan of the B cabinets until I was at one of these guitar camps, jamming with Joe Satriani and a couple of other people. And the volume at those camps is so incredibly loud when those jam sessions happen. And I quickly learned, it's like, I'm bringing a slant cabinet because those stages there are very narrow as opposed to deep, narrow, shallow. And I'm not the star of the show, so it means that me getting the copious amount of volume that I would want out of a monitor, and at that kind of volume, the monitors aren't going to save you anyway. You got to have it coming out of the amp, and I kind of very quickly learned to appreciate, first of all, the ability to hear myself in general, but I also kind of went, this is giving me a much more accurate sense of what it is. And if you look at people who use 412 cabinets, because we're talking about cabinets now, you'll notice more often than not when somebody's playing with just a single or multiple single cabinets across the bottom, or across the stage there, they're going to be using slants. So I'm kind of like, I've become a convert in that. And so I'm a big believer that enables us to do that. So first of all, Captain Scarlett, is your church kind of doing live worship right now? That's what I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. And Alan, let me know the same thing. And or, kind of what questions you guys have about this kind of whole Celestion full range live response experience and anything in general. We touched base. There we go. So that's, I will take that comment, and there we go. So you know what? Honestly, I couldn't agree with you more. I think a B cabinet sounds way better. I think there is a little bit of internal reflection. Ironically, so we're going to go geeky here for a second. If you think about a box, you get what are called standing waves. And, if you think about your average room, concrete floor, cinder block walls, boom, lots of reflection. If you don't have something in there to interrupt that reflection, what it does is it just bounces back and forth, and it creates what are called standing waves. So that's why, you put up absorption, and if you put some sort of reflection, it's actually, or I should say diffusion, it's usually kind of got some sort of thing trying to break up those standing waves. Matthew Winter, welcome. Great to see you. It is the first Tuesday of the month, shortly after 6 p.m. Pacific, and it is great to see you. We are talking about standing waves and volume and guitar cabinets. Sacrilege. But the thing is, interrupting those standing waves is something you ideally want to do, which is why conceptually, and there are internal waves inside a cabinet where the reflections are moving around. And, without going deeper than, look at all this. What's going on, Chris? Great to see you, man. Excellent, excellent. So, Chris, we are doing these the first Tuesday of every month, but you probably just heard me say that. So, I was finding that with the craziness of my schedule, I was not able to be as present as I wanted to be, and I didn't feel I was going to be able to come equipped and fresh. I know all of you guys know that concept, and I say, guys, respectively, coming up to the platform or doing some sort of ministry thing, you always want to feel fresh. And I was like, man, I'm just a little toasty here. All right. So that said, oh, there we go. Hang on a second. This is the one that always sneaks by me. Hello, Brett. Great to see you. Hello, hello, hello. Pedro, what's going on? Forrest, what's happening? Tammy, hello. Great to see you. Awesome. Thank you very much, Brett. I don't always play a Les Paul, but when I do, it's a Gibson or something like that. So this standing wave thing, again, if you've ever, hey, we're going to do church in a high school gymnasium. I got hit by hang on a second. My mouse, I've got this very cool USB-driven mouse because the other Mac mouse and I had an argument. Bluetooth mice don't play friendly. Oh, and I'm trying to get this thing. I've got to reach out to the Ecamm people and fix this standing waves. Yeah, I got nailed by a standing wave of that sort. So in any case, oh, I'll be right over, Chris. Those are great guitars. Do you have a Love Rock or what do you got? That's awesome. All right, so the standing wave business, ideally, if you think about your traditional B-style cabinet where it's square or rectangular or whatever, that's going to probably have more internal waves. And what happens is there's the initial, if you will, the reflection of the speaker. Oh, awesome. Good. I'm talking and texting or something at the same. Those are great guitars. So the thing is that there are internal reflections in the cabinet that by the time they're actually done doing their thing, they quite often are phase misaligned with the initial wave that comes out of the speakers. So what it does is it creates smudginess within the framework of your sound. So it's one of the things that it just happens. And as it turns out, 1968, the A cabinet seemed to have a little bit more stuff going on inside the cabinet. There's a that they get that you don't traditionally get with a B-style cabinet. There we go. Hey, yeah, give us a shout out. Let us know what you're playing. Let us know what you're playing. I would love that. So, okay. So the point being is we're on this little micro rant about all this because what's great is like, look, with a modeler, you don't have to turn it up like that Marshall over there to quote unquote get into the zone. And what's neat about having some sort of kind of, if you will, micro PA in your guitar rig, it means as you're rehearsing at home in your monitors, you're not, and it's one of the things I've noticed traditionally that when I'm in the monitors and I'm also having my modeler in there, it gets a little crowded, especially as you start to turn it up. So I love that. G and Ls are great guitars. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, those are great. And again, Chris has got his Love Rock. Those are very, very, very cool. What is my main worship guitar? It was actually kind of the funniest thing. The last time I did worship live, I brought a Gretsch. And it's got this really subtle sparkle in it. And one of the vocalists was just like, she's kind of staring at the guitar. And it's so, it's one of the great things about guitars is like the worst reason you can buy a guitar is for the way it looks. I mean, like seriously, right? We know this, but yet, we do succumb to the looks of an instrument. And this worship leader / BV was just like, I love that finish, and I'm trying not to kind of engage in this conversation that I'm having in my head, which is like, you never buy a guitar because of the way it looks, but you always like it when somebody goes, "That's the coolest looking guitar I've ever seen," right? It's a funny thing because you don't want to encourage that, but yet at the same time, you always it's always nice to feel a compliment to your said instrument. All right, let's see this. Ampless at church. Got it. Yeah, I've used an amp off stage for my own selfish needs. And so here's the thing that's totally legit about that is that just off the edge of the platform, it's always nice if people are cool with it to have just a little bit of something, because the instrument, you'll get a little bit more sustain and a little bit more life, especially in an experience where, the PA speakers are over here and your guitar's there. What your guitar is going to be responding to more than anything is the thump of the kick drum. And that, is groovy and all of that, but it's not really what the guitar wants to be hearing. And the saying is more cabo, not more kick drum. Should really be more guitar. Awesome. What's going on, Jay? Awesome. Japan domestic only. Very cool. Nice. Yeah, no, there is a whole series of instruments that get made in Japan that don't make it to the States, unfortunately. And some of which are lawsuit stuff and some of it's legit, Epiphone stuff. I actually have a general curiosity to get my hand on a set neck Epiphone Les Paul. I also want to get my hands on an Amos. That's what I really kind of is there. And why not the Joe Bonamassa Gold Top while I'm at it? And T-Breeze. All right, so here's the interesting thing about all of this is we've got a generation of guitar players that have come up playing with modelers, and there's absolutely no shame with it. But the interesting thing is that it's not always intuitive to pull open some sort of box and see this giant list of amplifiers and giant list of effects and go, okay, I'm going to use the Vox and, I don't know, the Dynacomp equivalent, because that's what everybody does, as opposed to kind of going, hey, what are these? And so, the unfortunate thing is Alan, I'm going to put you and I in the same boat here. Good stuff coming in. I grew up learning how to play through amps, learning to roll the volume back if I needed to bring the gain down, bring it up if I needed the volume and the gain up, and kind of, trial by error. And there was a lot more error and I guess a lot of trial as well. But the point being is that you learn, kind of the different food groups. Now that's probably, in the same way that kind of ran a couple of clips a minute ago. I enjoyed, being able to just kind of give some examples of that stuff. So I think we're going to do more of that stuff. That is to say, let's unpack a couple of demos and let's hear that. There is an amp that's here, and it's not a traditional worship amp, but it is the Tone Master from Fender, of course, the Super Reverb, and I am besides myself about this amp. What we will be doing in WM, and it means that there will be some videos around it, or a video around it, I should say, is a Tone Master Roundup, because I've got both Deluxes here, and the Twin, and the Super Reverb. So it's everything that they've done in that line, and especially for the House of Worship, because it's got a direct out, as well as basically a virtual power scaling. They are just perfect for worship. And the Super Reverb may not necessarily be the best church amp, although there was a period of time church guys and gals were into the 410 thing, but that seems to be less popular. All right, there are comments on the Facebook side that I can't bring in because of the type of connection that I use to push content out to Facebook, so I apologize that I can't bring that in. The funny thing, Brett, I was at a guitar show in Southern California, and there's hang on a second. Let's see if I can do this. Hang on a second. I can cut and paste. There we go. I was at a guitar show in Southern California, and I was at an amazing guitar booth. There we go. How big is that going to be? And it's going to be in black. Great. You just love that. We can fix that. Color picker. Come on. Or not. Hello? Just let me pick the color. Why are you being like this today? It's a little color wheel. That's totally bizarre. Now I'm getting my color wheel. There we go. Okay, good. Sorry, I'm learning how to operate the internet today. All right, good. There we go. So I was at the show, and this guy had this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful guitar. I think it's HK Guitars, but and the interesting thing is, and I'm going to go down the rabbit trail here before I kind of gather more great content here. This is hilarious. Tammy talking about the strings are so burly and shiny. But there was a combo there, and normally, as I've heard people using the Hughes and Kettner / HK stuff, is for higher gain stuff. But the clean tone was unreal. But the thing about the guitar, though, was it was this beautiful kind of maroon flame quilted maple top guitar. And usually the guitars that are quote unquote that pretty don't always sound as amazing as they look, if we're really honest. Sometimes they do, but and again, it's usually when I start looking at an instrument that I see is sometimes custom made, and it's this pretty as it is. I'm always kind of like, okay, let me plug it in. It played every bit as good as it looked, and it sounded amazing. And the amp was this Hughes and Kettner 212 Delio, and that sounded amazing. I was like, the combination of the two was like, wow. And so, I'm going to take that. And the reason I also wanted to post that, these little boogie cabinets behind me are called Thiel, or Thiele. I don't know how they're pronounced. I do know they're spelled Thiele. Originally, they came loaded with Electro Voice speakers, and basically they're ported and were originally designed around an EVM 12L, I believe, as opposed to an EVM 12M. But there's kind of the cabinet, like we were talking about, what was the word, Alan, that you used about the thud or the thump of the cabinet? There is a relationship between the cabinet, especially when it's ported, and the way the size of the cabinet and the frequency response of the speaker. There is this organic interaction that's happening. If you will make the analogy between a really big string on a really small guitar, right? It's just this balance thing. But those cabinets sound and behave more like 412 cabinets than 112 cabinets. So Brett, I am right there with you. It's always amazing to play a 1 or 212 and you're like, because quite often 112 cabinets, and you think about your average 112 enclosure, it's almost always a combo. And it's almost always a combo where you want this kind of air, kind of open, it's breathing thing, which is lovely. But the thing is when you plug into a 112 and you're like, holy cow, it's pretty amazing. Let's see. There's a gray bass guitar, matte gray wood stain. I love it. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Excellent. Excellent. The weight, the feel, the length, one day. We're believing for that, Tammy. Absolutely. Excellent. 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 Okay, let's see here. Right. Boogie users unite. Well, that actually fit. All right, before I went Helix, before Helix, I went with my Boogie Studio 22 on stage with me. Get a really nice sound without having to be too loud. The Boogie stuff is amazing, and the interesting thing is that as I'm going to presume just about everybody here knows, the good folks at Gibson, who by the way are active supporters of the House of Worship. And that's all I can say about that for the moment. But in our next show, I'll be able to say more. So the thing is that the Boogie is now owned by Gibson. So I think we're going to see a continued interest that Boogie had in terms of making gear that doesn't have to be incredibly loud. The only thing about Boogie gear, which anybody who owns it knows, it is the heaviest gear ever. But I'm also a Helix fan as well, so there we go. So that's interesting thing about that comma, Jay. If you were to think about all the heavy Christian bands, right, like Pillar and so on and so forth, all those bands play boogies. That's not necessarily your traditional in-church experience, right? But those bands, hardcore boogie folks, right? Which is pretty funny. But the amazing thing about boogies is that they're basically Fender amplifiers on steroids, right? So they just added multiple gain stages. I actually had a chance to. That's right, Alan with the PV. His tweedliness. The boogies basically started off as their live as these little Fender Princetons that basically got turned into these major hot rods. Oh, the deuce. Hang on, I'm gonna have to jump in on that conversation. Wait, Cody. Who's Cody? Hold on, wait. What the heck is? Hold on, wait. Well, there we go. Hang on. Yeah, that's one I missed. There we go, Alan. Yeah, I think the Love Rock is what Brian from Worship Tutorials picked up, but he's got one of those Tokais, and he's besides himself with that guitar. And they are great instruments. I'm slightly jealous. All right, hang on a second. There we go. Let's take a look here. Let's what's in your rig? All right. Oh, hang on. So now it's all tiny. Oh, wait, I know. Hang on. Give me a moment. As I started to say before, hang on. Wait. Oh, I get it. I have to make a different type of keyboard thing to make that happen. There we go. All right, that's going to be better. Except it just disappeared. Oh, no. Oh, that was not what I wanted to have. Oh, okay. Well, it took it. I was using an AC mic backstage. Hey, by the way, I'm taking votes. What is the official spelling on mic'd? We have gone back and forth of this in the magazine. So it's a microphone. So there's M-I-C. Oh, wait, hold on. I've got it in set so it goes off right away. So, but Mike ED would be if there was a Webster dictionary version of it, that would be the correct one. But there's also Mike apostrophe D, and then there's MIKED for, I don't know, Mike. But it's one of those things that we've never really come up with the definitive answer. Hang on a second. All right, there we go. So it needed to be so loud to get the Voxy thing going that we had room bleed, and the guitar was so low in the system there was never any guitar, never guitar in the love stream. This is an interesting thing. It's just like sometimes we get what we want, and then we don't get what we want, right? It's a fascinating thing. One of the other things that I will suggest trying, especially if you are not using IEMs, is actually using an amp, if that's one of the options, and facing it towards the back wall. And what you're doing, because the neat thing is amps are generally very directional, and the biggest mistake you can ever make in the world using an amp in worship is pointing it directly either at the sound person, although it enables them to hear it, but traditionally these little amps, highly directional like a laser beam, or pointing it at the pastor. It usually is the precursor of like, hey, we need to talk about the guitar volume. But pointed at the back wall, you can get the reflection and get this nice wash of guitar that works really well in worship. I like that a lot. Now, wait a second. So this I saw. What is a Geneva amp sim? I have not heard of a Geneva amp sim. So I'll add that to my research list. Because if you're using it, my guess is it's Groovy. WGS. Geneva amp sim. Okay. Boom. Okay, good. Oh, I love this. Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to grab this one. Let's do this right here. Wish there was a better way to do this, but this is better than nothingness. I'm going to do that. And are there any font heads out there? Is there anybody who loathes Times as much as I do? Is that way too font geeked for you? All right. What process do you use for finding the right speaker for the right cab? Oh, you've opened the Pandora's proverbial box. That is a great question. And I'm hoping I'm going to get a chance to do a couple more videos for the Celestian folks. And I'm waiting to hear back about that, because what I really want to do is do a couple of blend videos, because I just saw that come in, Alan. That's very funny. I'm not going to switch these guys, but he basically said, at least it's not Comic Sans. So the thing is that there is very, very much this right. Okay. Having spent a prolific amount of time in Speakerville, and also there's a new amp that I bought. I bought the Jimi Hendrix. It's the JH100 from Marshall that came out in 2006. They made like 600 of them, and it comes with a tall 412, and it's not. I think it's a 1982. I think they actually call it a 1982 JH. B, I think is what it is, because the B is the lower cabinet, as in bottom, I guess. And then also came with a traditional slant on the top. But I kind of got a B in my bonnet and went out. I got a second one of the tall cabinets. So I'm going to commit total and gross Marshall sacrilege. And I'm going to pull, and the second one came with 75Ts or T12 T75s. I'm going to pull those out, and those aren't the right speakers for that cabinet, which is a little disappointing, but that's a different conversation. Actually, no, I'm going to start there. Okay, so here's the deal. If you think about your Vox AC30 as opposed to an AC15, because an AC30 is a two-speaker deal, the previously ideal thing to have in them would be a pair of Alnico Blues. They've got this chime and this lovely little bit of chirp. The bottom is not super defined as part of the grooviness. You're not going to be palm muting power metal with those, right? I'm going to move this comment down a little bit, but I'm going to keep it up. I have a vintage AC30 that has basically the silver bells, which are the precursors to the Alnico Blues, and they are magical. They ring, and they just lovely. They growl when you need them to growl. And, by the way, an AC30 isn't just a worship amp. If you want to play blues, it's a great amp. And although I was not expecting to talk about Stone Temple Pilots, I'm going to mention Stone Temple Pilots because the guitar player, when last I saw them, which will be the last time I will have seen them, he was using a combination of a Marshall and an AC30, and I think they were pretty much up at the same time. I don't think he was toggling between the two of them, and I was like, wow, what a great sound. They really worked well together. Getting back to the what's the right speaker, the newer AC30s, and I was on the Vox site, and we are developing this really wonderful, at the magazine, this really wonderful relationship with the great people at Vox. We're really enjoying that. And I was over there kind of like, I want to do an AC30 story, kind of a roundup and kind of what is yesterday's AC30. Let's talk a little bit. And we may not do this with the Vox people about the Korg era stuff, because there are a lot of people who love those Korg era AC30s. But then there's this new stuff, and the new AC30s, there's a lot of Celestian greenbacks in there, which is not quite as chimey, but they're just a little bit more rock and roll. But it just kind of seems to be now there is a cabinet, there we go, right there, that, guess what? It's got a combination of a greenback and an Alnico Blue. So the idea is that if you kind of look at what natively comes in the enclosure that would ship with fill-in-the-blank amplifier, first place to start. First of all, I'm buddies with a guy named Peter Stapfer, who's one of the diesel guys. There's Peter's Diesel and there's Peter Stapfer. And one of the things that he made very clear to me in an extended conversation about speaker cabinets was the manufacturer goes to, depending on the manufacturer, goes to great lengths to, especially with an external cabinet, to kind of compose the way that cabinet responds to the amp. And that is a matter of crafting the right enclosure for the right speaker. So it's this kind of, if you will, three-way system: the amplifier, the cabinet that encloses the speaker, hence why they're called enclosures, right? And then the speakers themselves. And so he was like, it's not just the cabinet, it's also the choice of the speakers. And so if you were looking for an AC30 world, that the blue and the green really complement each other well, hence why I've got them in that cabinet back there. And no small coincidence, that cabinet although it is not a Vox AC30 cabinet. Sure looks a lot like one. So that gets us to the next implicit part of your question. I'm going to turn this off here. No, I'm going to leave it up just in case anybody wonders what I am rambling on about coming in. First of all, hello again, everybody. If you've just tuned in, welcome, welcome, welcome. So, Tammy, SDP, the one CD you could listen to all the way through over and over. It is just, yeah. And they were amazing. Scott was great then, and the whole band, they were great. They were great. They were great. Not necessarily your worship thing, but they were great. All right. So then it's a matter of going, okay, there is usually this ideal combination of amplifier and speaker, usually again starting with what the original manufacturer started with. And then, of course, then there's this whole thing of like, okay, well, if I'm going to play a Marshall, which Marshall am I thinking about? And this is kind of gets us into this conversation about the wrong speakers in that tall 1982 JHB cabinet. Those should have been some sort of greenbacky dealio. A 25-watt greenback is probably about the right thing. Actually, to be air appropriate, it should have been 20s, but these cabinets, no, 25 watters. Because for those of you that are Hendrix fanatics, you would have seen this little 100 thing in the upper left-hand corner of the cabinet, which implied that it had 4 25-watt speakers, hence why I just corrected myself. But the point being, is this has got the G12, I always get it backwards, but I think it's T75, so I want to say 75Ts. And those are the modern speakers that since those cabinets back there, those are JCM, one's a JCM 900 cabinet, the other's a 1960 lead. But basically those are just kind of like, since basically the 80s, the late 80s, mid 80s, I will have a date for that. Those are the speakers that if you get a Marshall 412 cabinet, unless they've been changed, is what's in there. And those are great speakers. I love them for higher gain amplifiers. That is not my first choice when I'm going for something vintagey. I want something that's some sort of greenback. A G12M is a nice vintagey speaker. Now, the other thing is that, and I'm sorry I'm going down a rabbit trail, but you are near and dear to my heart with this topic. The anniversary G12H, you'll see that in a lot of combos, like this one. I actually memorized it's number 5. There we go. So in my handy little Benson back there, that's what's in there. And there are a ton of boutique manufacturers that's their speaker of choice. It's got the warmth of a greenback, but it's a little bit crisper and it's a little bit tighter in the bottom end. One of the things about the T75s is they are tighter in the bottom end. A greenback, if you listen to Van Halen really closely, the bottom end of Eddie's speakers, not super, super tight. And I realize we're not necessarily talking about Sunday morning here, but the idea is we're talking about gear. And it's understandings like we don't do a lot of palm muting in church. And so the lack of definition in the bottom end is one of the things that I love about an AC30. There's a clarity in the top end and a rumble in the bottom end. And it's part of the magic of the amplifier, and it's part of the magic of those speakers. The blue, you'll never see some metalhead, generally speaking, with a 412 cabinet loaded with the blues. First of all, they're really expensive. Second of all, it's just the wrong speaker. So that long diatribe is that, again, to start with what the original manufacturer put in there. And it's always good to, send an email. It's like, why did you choose that speaker? Because the other thing is, it's one thing to see what they put in there. It's another thing if you can get them to respond, which most of the boutique people will, especially, why those speakers? Like, as we engage the Vox people, because I'm sure they're going to send 1 or 2 AC30s, because it's good to engage the worship folks who, judging by this thread, we know there's an AC15 user in here. So the thing is, why are they leaning towards the greenback? Same thing I would ask the Fender folks. Why am I starting to see more Celestines and Fender amps? You're starting to see this interesting cross-pollination. There will be strategy around all of that. Okay. All right. Look at that. Now, are these going to overlay? Yeah, they are. So yes, they do hold the heavy ground. So hang on, Alan, somewhere in there. Um, oh wow, look at that! Wow. Okay, so that's high praise there. Well, that is so and that is okay. So here's the thing, Matthew. The interesting thing is, I'm getting to ready to make an album, and what am I doing as I'm getting ready to do that? I'm going out and listening to a bunch of people that I want to make an album that's in the same vein as what they're doing, a classic rock instrumental album, of which that sort of thing doesn't really exist. And when I say classic rock, I mean like 70s. But, oh, okay. I'm seeing the Geneva Westminster effect. All right, I will be noting that, and I can select that from over there. Okay, good. Awesome. So the thing is that I am specifically going out and going, okay, what are the tones that I'm most interested in? And here's the thing is that I totally agree with you. It's just like, oh, Droff's got one. I got to have it. But if I were to be totally honest, as much as I am, I'm like, so in other words, the reason you're going to get it is because somebody else uses it. Well, I'm totally that guy too, right? Where I'm like, okay, well, what was Hendrix using? All right, as I go to do some of these different tones, I actually have an amp that's basically a trace of one of his actual amplifiers, and I'll be playing some strats through it. And there's probably going to be a fuzz face in the mix, and who knows, there might even be a wah-wah. And, I'm kind of like, wait a second, that's exactly what I'm doing. How can I point at other people and go, that's so trendy, where everything that guitar players do, for the most part, is trendy. It's a funny thing. Here's the thing: is it's like we know that there's a subtle difference. I think I found articulately the way to say it, and I need to write this down. There are tone chasers, and there are trend chasers, and I think the thing that curdles the stomach a little bit is when it's a bunch of folks that they're only doing it because somebody else is doing it, not because they have fallen in love with that sound. Now, I will also say, being not the jerk that I used to be, it's like, you know what? Sometimes that's the best people we got to work with, right? Which is kind of like, I don't quite know gear that well, and I see that the Nigel's using it. And, here's the thing. The unfortunate thing about the trend chasers is that quite often they have all the right pedals on the board, and they're doing all the right thing. But sometimes they're like, I don't quite know where to go, so I'll go to the center of the whatever the heck that is that you when you do the you look at numbers and you take a query. There's kind of the bell, and you're right smack in the center of that. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, so Alan, I got to say, first of all, the 5150, of which I do not have one yet in the fold here. That will happen, but not for a classic rock record. But the thing is that sad truth, Alan, back in the time that about you and I were in elementary school. I'm sorry. Actually, I was in junior high school at that point. There was a local music store called Don Weir's Music Cities, where the Journey guys used to come shot. It's not the bell curve. It's the mean. So it's like you go right smack in the center, right? That's that point where the middle of the you're gonna, if there's a 5-lane freeway, you're right in the middle, right? You're just kind of the perfect sampling, driving the same speed as the average people, the mean, right? All right, so Don Weir's Music City, they were PV dealer. Journey guys used to shop there, and a bunch of other people as well. And so I blew up a series of deuces and maces, and I must admit, loud was my thing at that point. But there were no less than 4 deuces and maces that like they did not tolerate Doppler. And this would be within about 4 or 5 days. I'd take it home, turn it up, and the amp would, and it wasn't like I was blowing speakers, it's just the amp would stop working. It's some sort of crackling thing. So it may have just been a bad run, or they were like, let's send it to the Don Weir's Music City guys. I don't know. But it was like, it was a series of times. So me and the Deuce, we were not friends. Oh, wow. A Mesa Boogie amp that's not that heavy. That's so funny. That's great. That's good to know. Your chiropractor is regretting the fact that you found a light Mesa Boogie, but I celebrate that. Pick up a deuce. So there it is. Pick up a deuce. Alan, I love you dearly, but we're going to have to agree to disagree on this. This is what's great about church brothers and sisters who can get along even when they don't agree. I love that. Oh boy, I oh no, he went there. Oh no, Mr. Bill. Oh, there we go. Federa 4. Let's give the bass player some. Come on. So, all right. So I have not played the Aguilar yet. I did play the 50th anniversary. Can you help me out? Okay. That is a question. Okay. First of all, I have not played the Aguilar. Their stuff is really, 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 really good. I am an Ampeg fanatic, and I actually was cutting some bass yesterday. I had to put my bass away a little earlier. I absolutely love... So this isn't going to be a really helpful answer other than the fact to say I absolutely love Ampeg amps. First of all, I got a B210, which is kind of their cheap little 210 combo. Amazing. It basically has what I understand is the preamp section from the SVT in there. And, kind of anything with 10s as a bass player, I'm super happy, right? My buddy is there's Dino at Ampeg, and then there's my buddy that kind of came into kind of be Dino's cohort there. Because Dino has been with Ampeg and doing trade shows and artist relations for a couple of decades. So I got a chance to hear and play through the 50th anniversary when it was debuted at the NAMM show 2 years ago. Unreal. I will also go DC on you. So David Curran is somebody that I would consider a friend in that he doesn't necessarily call and wish me happy birthday, but we're buds. And he is one of the most amazing bass players I've ever heard. And for those of you who don't know, one of the greatest bass lines, and hang on a second. What is the name of that? No, somebody's going to be able to put in the name of that Elevation Worship song, but it's the tastiest worship bass lick ever. And so he's Lauren Daigle's touring bass player. And so I connected with my friend at Ampeg, and not big known him, it's just the story. And Lauren Daigle's tour was the first tour to go out with the 50th anniversary SVT. And so the thing is that David, like myself, is a big fan of the B4N, so the kind of the flip top, because those amps are equally amazing and arguably for worship, unless it's kind of depending on the size of the venue and how modern versus vintage you want to go. I really love the B4. I'm 99% positive. Hang on a second. I've actually got it loaded on a plug-in insert. Hang on, just 1 second. That is to say, I am as much of a bass geek, literally. I ended up actually not using. Yeah, there it is. It's the B4N. Yeah. There it is. I wonder if I can go to this. Hang on a second. I wonder if I can do this without breaking the internet. Let's see if I can go there. Oh, I need to unlock the scene. There we go. And let's go to. There it is. Oh, look at that. I mean, it's just the coolest looking amp ever. All right, I digress. I was talking about that you shouldn't buy stuff because of the way it looks. But the 50th anniversary just sounded amazing. And like the virtual versions of the B4N, there's a vintage side and a modern side. And so you kind of but you probably knew this, but having played through one, I was like, just monstrous and just, if aggressive, but classic. And all the things that you love about an Ampeg bass amp, including the 810 cabinet. Yes. It's unreal. One of my favorite bass experiences ever. And and I'm just speaking truth. I'm not big noting here. I did the videos for Universal Audio on their SVT plugins. So I speak bass, and I love bass. Just love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Bruce Adolph. Hello, my friend. How are you? Oh, wait, I can pull you into the feed from here. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to say hello to the publisher of Worship Musician, who will never let me call him my boss, which is fine. But, for those of us who really know what Hefe means, we'll just go there. All right. So getting back to this bass thing, they're fabulous. Unfortunately, I do not have any experience with the Aguilar stuff. There are a ton of great bass players who use it and love it. But I'm an Ampeg guy, except in the studio. If I can't make the Ampeg do exactly what I want to, whether it's an SVT, SVT Pro, B4N, I'll go to SansAmp. And the other thing is it's stashed over there somewhere. If you're looking for the cheap, easy, holy cow, it sounds great pretty much in any mix as long as your bass sounds good. That little SansAmp bass pedal with it's kind of got a DI and it's got all this great stuff for the money. I think it's the best thing. I have not used any of the dark glass stuff to answer the implicit question that was there. And boy, I hope you're still on the feed. But in any case, bass amp and stuff. Oh, I love it. Okay, hang on a second. Okay. Chris Alexander. He forgot it was. Oh, dude. I feel you. Like I'm lamenting because I'm like, tomorrow's Wednesday. Like the week is gonna be gone. So Chris, I know exactly how you feel. But you know what? Always a pleasure to see you. So, oh no. Wait a second. Another piece of gear I don't know about. All right. What Spurgeon? And the interesting thing is, I kind of live in a bit of a bubble, but I can tell you guys that there is a strong rumor that Worship Musician Magazine is going to be doing a reverb roundup, and I've got a nice, healthy sampling of the pedals that I know about rounded up. Nice sampling. So we at one point did something with like 15 delay pedals. But I have got a nice little collection of them, and that invariably will be making it into one of these broadcasts. Probably not the next one, but the one after that. Wait a second. Joel Osteen has his own drive pedal? Yes. That's my kind of pastor. All right, just check out Westminster Effects. Okay. We'll be doing that. Good. I love the Osteen. I think we need to have, every famous pastor has got, V4B Allen, look at you. Man after my own heart. You said 70s. Come on, baby. You got it. Okay, let me check in over here on Facebook just to make sure I'm not ignoring somebody and being rude over there. All right. That's not a big help because that would be YouTube. All right, good. All right, Forrest, PV Classic 30 next to me. That sounds great. Here's the thing: is okay, hang on, David, or Daviduck rather. Hang on a second. All right, wait. Let me. Okay, all right. There we go. T75. Look at this. Thank you. Thank you for that, Brett. I always get it backwards, but I'm starting to get it right. And he's even got the dash. The 75 stands for. You know what it stands for. All right, Forrest, we are ampless as well, using an LP traditional through a Podgo. I love the Podgo. Have a couple of other choices, Telly, G&L, Legacy. Those G&Ls are great, but tough to dial in the single coils. I end up too high and harsh in the house. LP smooths things out, but missing those strat tones. Been working with the sound guys, but tough decisions about EQ or discussions about EQ. We need to walk through the audio chain to see where it fails. Sounds good in my in-ears. Stream is especially tough. Boy, that is there's so much. So I'm gonna jump in on that. Peter, great to see you. And Peter has some feedback on Aguilar. But let me just jump in on Forces. No, you know what? I tell you what. Let me. I'm going to come back to that. I'm not going to forget about it. So Peter Daviduck is a brilliant bass player. And he knows a thing or two about tone. He knows a thing or two about a thing or two, actually. There we go. Brilliant bass player. All right. Peter, are you still playing with Brian? Let me know. All right, there we go. Aguilar is gorgeous. I know you can read this, but I'm reading it anyway. Maybe you're driving or something. Aguilar is gorgeous and smushy and sweet, but for me, I'd go for the 50th for the tones that we all know that are in there and the versatility from rock to smooth jazz and everything. The man has spoken. Boom. You know, this is, again, gets us back to tried and true, right? There is tone chasing, because, you know, Ampeg tones are kind of pretty much my favorite, but I will say I do love the Tech 21 stuff. It works really, really well. All right, let me go. There we go. Haven't for a while, but playing with hip hop artist Fresh IE. There we go. Come on, up here in Canada. Awesome. Peter, you know, there's the truth, and then there's everything else. So Forrest is talking about the PV Classic 30. I actually have a couple of tweeds. I have one tweed. It's the Edge Deluxe tweed, and it's awesome. The thing about, and Alan and other tweedies will say, a tweed amp is like, it's like a radar trap. It all happens real fast. And it is not a forgiving amplifier, but when you learn, until you start turning it up and they start distorting, but when you learn, especially a teledirector, and do a tweed, the whole thing happens really fast. That is, say, there's the pick attack, and you're hearing the amp instantaneously. It's not like kind of like a blackface where it kind of gently opens up. You know, the interesting thing about the revs, the tube in the revs is the amps are D20s. It's a 6V6, which is the same tube as in a deluxe reverb. So it's got this warmth and this softness and this natural compression. It's the thing that they did with the Super Reverb, the Tone Master Super Reverb. It has this tube-like compression. I'm like, how did they do it? It's just like, you know, I think I could take just about anybody I know that knows the Super Reverb, blindfold them, and toggle between the two amps. And I would bet 50% of the time, or 49% of the time, they would pick the wrong amp. It's just like, I'm besides myself because I'm a big Super Reverb. It's just kind of like the B15N. There's certain amps that it may not be the best known amplifier. That is to say, there was a period of time where Stevie Ray, you know, was everywhere. And people were like, oh, you know, all right, Super Reverb and a Vibraverb, then add a Dumble to the mix, and let's add some Marshalls while we're at it. You know, let's do 6 amps, sure. But the thing is that in the post-Stevie Ray era, there have not really been any hardcore Super Reverb users. So, you know, and honestly, no, it's fine, okay. I wasn't, you know, as much as the demos for the Super Reverb, there's some really outstanding playing in them. It's not trying to make the Super Reverb sound like the Super Reverb. Yes, it's a pedal platform, but plug into one of those amps and you just kind of go, that's the sound. So the thing about the Classic 30s, I just kind of like, I need to get one of those just because it you know, and honestly, what they were just doing was copying what the work with the Fender was doing in an era after Fender stepped away from the tweed. It was a really smart move on Hartley's part. That is to say, Hartley PV. But you know, it's an interesting thing. All right. I'm going to make sure I keep an eye on his feet, and I've got it up front. All right, now I'm going to go down the trail here of the ampless thing. So this is an interesting thing because I am in pre-production, actively writing material for a classic rock instrumental record, and the tones are everything. So I am spending a lot of time using the same setup, switching different guitars, kind of going, similarities and differences. And depending on what it is that you're playing through and how much drive and or how much sustain and or how much compression, the more stuff you got going on with good gear, it still sounds like the guitar, but the more it kind of stays in the same lane. The more you begin to kind of really, if you will, if the goal is to focus on the organic sound of the instrument and don't use a lot of compression. And, really where you're like, I want my Strat to sound as Stratty as humanly possible, and my Les Paul to sound as Les Paul as humanly possible. The interesting thing about the neck pickup in this guitar, it's not Bodie, which, some Les Pauls, they do that thing. So the honestly, Forrest, you may want to take a look at, what your pickup options are in those other guitars, right? So the as I recall, the traditional, you'll have to excuse me, does the traditional have the push pull or the pull pots, to kind of give you those other coil options? There's an instrument that I can't talk about yet, from a manufacturer whose name I won't mention either, but there will be a review of it in the next issue of Worship Musician Magazine, and it's got some stuff. Kind of, the neat thing is manufacturers are starting to get much more aware of the fact that there are things that people love about single coil, narrow aperture instruments. So I need to have a little pickup conversation here just so everybody's on the same page. So these are wide aperture humbucking pickups. And you could have narrow aperture humbucking pickups that are either stacked or there's some sort of thing such that they're hearing the string from a much smaller amount of real estate. And why this matters, if you think as you go up the neck, the frets get closer and closer together, such that as you approach the bridge here, kind of, if you will, the half-step spacing gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Which means that every little micrometer as you end up close to the bridge is going to begin to impact your tone in a way that distance doesn't down at the bottom of the neck. That is to say, if you think about the distance you need to move a half step from the bottom of, if you will, the second fret to the top of the third fret, and then you do think about the same thing between the bottom of the 14th fret and the top of the 15th fret, and then kind of shoot that beam all the way to over here, you begin to realize how a narrow aperture single coil pickup and a wide aperture humbucking pickup hear a much wider frequency range. And it means that, if you think about the bridgemost coil, where in a Strat, for some reason, Leal decided, hey, I don't think the pickup's bright enough. Let's do this and make the top. And it's because of the amps that people were playing through at the time and kind of what the modern sounds were. They wanted to give the guitar player the ability to be heard. And, the other thing is that there weren't giant PAs. There was no Pod Go to plug into some traditional PAs. If you kind of look at, Marshall-made PA heads that are great for electric guitar. The point being is that the pickups make a huge difference. The idea is that, and this is the other thing is that this is where, something like these Celestion full range live response speakers, as well as your home, if you have studio monitors at home, I'm looking at my monitors, that's my head looking off from left to right. I would suggest trying to determine and make a list of something to the effect of what you're plugging into at home, what it sounds like there, listening to a range of different music on your in-ears, and then listening to that same music on your studio monitors. Listening, if you can get a wireless unit, what it sounds like in your in-ears, what it sounds like front of house, and what it sounds like through the live stream. And, then as you pointed out, you're already well down that path, but that's one of the reasons why I want to jump on this, is that, you've been working with the sound guys, but tough discussions about EQ. This is one of the things that, I kind of have been finding out as I've been kind of working on some tracks and getting things so the guitars work together. Quite often the blend between instruments happens either going and listening to something and then making some EQ and gain level adjustments because of where you're hearing something sit, or the sound tech making those decisions for you. And because the vast majority of sound techs that I've met like to hit things with sticks, they generally mix for drums and vocals first, which, arguably you want to feel the kick drum because that's telling you where your downbeat is at the beginning of the measure. They have a tendency to mix the snare drum way too hot. It's kind of this funny thing is like, I can hear everything about the snare drum, and if I heard half as much detail of my electric guitar, I'd be elated. Just kind of like, they're like, it's just like, it's a drum mix. It's amazing. Like, there are other instruments, the drums, last time I checked, don't actually play any of the supporting chords. The vocal melody, that juxtaposition is, they're making that happen. The keys are just going, wash. So the instrument that's actually playing chords where the lowest note of the chord more often than not, at least especially with an acoustic guitar, but also the way that I have a tendency to, when and where necessary, as a rhythm guitar player, I will define the bass note of that chord because it gives the worship leader something to work off of. Or as I move up the neck, I'm still conscious of the note I'm providing the worship leader, the clusters and the whatever inversions that I'm using that allows the melody to really sit. The bass note, the melody, and the voicing that I'm using allows the right amount of tension and release as the melody's moving. For example, if you play a sus4, while the vocals, and then go down to the natural 3, and you're going, because if they go to this guy, that's already in it. That's basically the 3, 4, and 5. And if you're going na da na na, they go to that note. It's already in the chord, and a little bit of tension never hurts so long as you get back to your resolution point. So the idea being is that you're aware of where that vocal melody is around the chords you're playing. That's just literally a matter of, as you're rehearsing and kind of not, because most of the time we get a chart that tells us nothing about where the guitar is actually played, and we get an MP3 hopefully pitched to the right key, or we get a YouTube track that's always in the wrong key. And then depending on how 4K video downloader friendly you are about being able to grab a hold of that track and then potentially rip the audio off. That wasn't quite the analogy I wanted to make. Remove the audio from the video so that you can actually pitch it and get into the right key. 4K video downloader. You're kind of, and the other thing is that the voicing that worked well in the guy key sounds terrible in the girl key, and the voicing that sounded great in the girl key sounds terrible in the guy key. So you're kind of constantly chasing straws, especially if you have a male worship leader that leads the song one week and a female worship leader that leads the song the other week. You're going to have to learn some different chord voicings most of the time to make that work, which means the chord voicings you're playing, the notes that are surround notes for the melodies are super, super important. I'm going to have a little micro music lesson here for a second, and at about 7:30 I'm going to be heading off to a little bit of quality time with my wife. So we got about 14 more minutes here. So the deal is that there's a concept that I'm working on with my students called skeletones, and in weeks past I had pulled up a graphic that basically had the mode shape, and if you take a look at the first, third, and fifth tones of your average, especially the second finger root modes, and then kind of use that to draw a chord shape in the second octave, you can really see where those notes come from in each one of the mode. All right, little baby music lesson. Major scale, 2 holes and a half, 3 holes and a half. That would be the C major, C, hold the D, hold the E, half to F, hold the G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C. If we took that relationship, and the reason we start off with C is that's what the piano starts off with, and that's the mother of all scales, but we can take that same relationship, 1, hold a 2, hold a 3, half to 4, hold a 5, hold a 6, hold a 7, half to 1, drag it down a string. 1, hold a 2, hold a 3, half to 4, hold a 5, hold a 6, hold a 7, half to 1, and that becomes G, hold to A, hold to B, half to C, hold to D, hold to E, hold to F sharp, half to G. And by the way, from that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th note to the 7th note is a whole step. So if we're going from E to a note that's either a half step or a whole step above it. It's got to be some sort of F note, which is why it's F sharp instead of G flat. Right? Good. All right. So, in this key, that is. All right, so the deal is, if you think about this G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G business, and play it like G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and pick this 1, 3, 5, and this 1, 3, 5 is in G being the 1, A being the 2, B being the 3, C being the 4, and D being the 5. When we take that G, B, and D in the second octave, that 1, 3, and 5, that's where those chord shapes come from. And why those are so important is these skeletones. It's if you boiled each one of the... sorry, I missed one piece. So if we start the G major scale off of its first note, that's major. If we started off of its second note, that's Dorian. And any major scale for that matter. Third note, Phrygian. Fourth note, Lydian. Hence why you can think of these as, if you take these chords, you can think of this as the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, 6 chord, 7 chord, and so on and so forth. So those are what I refer to as the skeletones. Why? Why does it matter? Because those are the chord tones that the majority of the melody notes that sit over that bass note when we're playing the 1 chord or the 4 chord. That's where those melody notes that sit over that chord, those are the 60 to 75% of the notes will be the 1, 3, and 5 of each of those modes as it sits over the chords that are made from that mode. And with that in mind, if you think about it, like you got a chord, the melody is kind of hanging out with those chord notes. That's where it comes from. And there'll be some movement, but there's internal tension and release. And sometimes as you're playing, for example, a 3, 6, 2, and 5, sometimes over one of those chords in there, the vocal melody will create a little extra tension, just such that when it gets to the point where it picks a really nice resolution tone, it's kind of making it such that it lands somewhere. Why does this matter? Because as guitar players, we want to be aware of what those skeletones are, as in the 1, 3, 5 of each of these modes, as in G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F sharp, C, E, G, D, F sharp, A, E, G, B, F sharp, A, C, and G, B, D, such that as we hear the melody kind of meandering up and down around those tones, we know when they're using one of the skeletones and when they're not. And if we know what the 1, 3, and 5 are, on the upper side of the 1 is the 2. On the upper side of the 3 is the 4. On the upper side of the 5 is the 6. And on the lower side of the 1 is the 7. So if you know what the 1, 3, and 5 are, you can find any other of the 7 notes that are in each one of these modes. So the idea is then being able to go, what's happening with the vocal melody that when I play some little inversion, because again, most of the time we're not actually getting the actual parts, we'll know, oh, you know what, that, I need to play this and then I need to go to that. And, the other thing is sometimes we'll play some sort of little arpeggiated pattern. And sometimes, whether it's a skeletone or not, you need to change one of those notes because of what's happening with the vocals. And by being able to know what the note names are, you know what the note names are. Okay. Well, let's see here. All right. My mouse is back. Come on. There you go. All right. Good, good, good. PV Power Worship. Federa, with great pleasure, my friend. I hope that is a help and did not provide more confusion. I mean, here's the funny thing. There's a huge amount, especially in the worship space, a huge amount of talk about, guitar gear and all of that. There is not a lot of talk about worship gear. And there was a period of time I was doing a better job in the magazine, if I'm going to be totally and brutally honest, of covering the bass stuff because I knew that there was a need. But we also found that we're getting a lot more traction with the guitar players. So we just kind of went, this is where the sweet spot is. But I need to kind of have a powwow with my buddy Bruce, El Jefe Grande, and just kind of go, maybe we can kind of do some sort of roundup-y thing around bass preamp pedals. I think that would be a really great thing to do and make sure that gets out there. So thank you. I'm happy to be of service and with great pleasure. Okay. So this is, and Alan, are you using? I've forgotten what your main Sunday guitar is. Forrest, getting back to this this point again about the EQ thing. Once we kind of start ending up in the upper register of the guitar, playing these little chords, we want to be obviously very conscious that it doesn't really start to thin out. As, the more we get on the treble strings and the higher up the neck, the ice pickier it can be. So this gets back to anybody looking at an instrument. I bought a new guitar recently, and one of the things that I've really noticed about this instrument in particular, arguably more than kind of just about all the guitars that I've got, it's extremely consistent at the bottom of the neck versus the top of the neck, or vice versa. That is to say, it doesn't thin out. It actually is very consistent. And it's actually pretty rare that an instrument will do that, in that it has the same proportion of bass, middle, and treble. I remember hearing Steve Morse talk about the fact that when he's soloing and playing from the Dixie Dregs and now Deep Purple, that he actually will kind of roll the tone control back as he moves up the neck. And I thought, oh, that's a lot of work. I'm all about, fiddling with the controls and switching pickups. One of the things that Gilby Clarke taught me, for any of you that are love rock or Les Paul players, and I am using a lot, and I never would have thought to do this, is there are times that you want just the bridge pickup, and there are times that you want just the neck pickup. What Gilby taught me was that you basically have the bridge pickup all the way up, and you can fatten it up with the neck pickup. You just kind of dial it into taste. And that's different than adding or subtracting, with the tone controls, which you can blend into that mix as well. But the thing that I've also been doing is taking the neck pickup and having it all the way up, and then blending in just a little bit of the bridge pickup, just to add a little bit more of the bridge pickup. But it does this strange thing where it kind of re-EQs or re-equalizes kind of the voicing of the neck pickup. That is to say, you're not adding enough of the bridge pickup. You go, oh, that's the 50-50 blend of them. Instead, I'm kind of going, I'm just adding that little bit in, and sometimes how we use the pickup selectors is an important thing. Getting back to this pre-production and the Sunday thing, for sound people, and I realize I took a little left turn there, but I'm back. The drummer playing sound tech, prayerfully, and by the way, I would always suggest, if possible, to have any of these meetings over a coffee and not in the venue. There's always time to show up before a Sunday, or if or after the service or something like that, presuming the venue, you're not loading in and loading out really quickly, right? And kind of find out, like, what are they into? What music do they listen to? That's going to give you some good insights. It also gives you the opportunity, whether it's over coffee, whether it's over lunch, over a dinner, or inviting. Here's the thing: you want to have a great relationship with the sound techs. Invite them into your home. Let's see if I can say this without insulting anybody. I think I can find a way of doing this. More often than not, techs are comfortable kind of working on their own. If you think about your average musician, their fantasy is that they're going to have either some famous rock band, or the worship team is going to be this influential thing, and it's this togetherness thing that we do this. That's a very different personality type than somebody that's back there at the console. They're having this very intimate relationship with the faders. They're like, that's their world. I remember a drummer that I played with for a number of years said even as a kid he loved just having a little space to work in. So although he had a huge drum set, that's still the range of the thing. I'm a guy that wants a big stage. I want to roam, boom, and I was told more than once by a senior pastor that I needed to shorten my roaming. It's just one of those things. Why do I want to be on one place on the platform? I've matured past that for the most part. But the point being is that kind of like, this is my space. I don't need to really interact with other musicians. Gives you a lot of insight about how they think things. They're processing a huge amount of information, making a number of decisions simultaneously, not the least of which is I'm having to mix front of house and I'm having to mix for a live stream. That's like that's like loving pepper and loving salt, and trying to get that blend where, I have just the right amount of pepper and I've got just the right amount of salt. But I really like things more peppery. But I really like things more salty. It's just kind of like you're kind of going, it's complicated. And so because of that, there is an ideal mix front of house and it's going to change when people come in. So there's sound check, and then everything in the room changes as soon as there's a bunch of bodies in there. But guess what? The live stream mix generally doesn't change when there's a bunch of bodies in there. So it's this three-dimensional who's on first thing, and it's really hard. And nobody is ever happy with the results for the most part until you're in the kind of the pro end of things. And there's always somebody in the congregation, of course, feels free every Sunday to have to give their expert opinion on the sound. Now, here's the thing: is that if the sound is too loud, the better person to go to, rather than the sound tech who's just kind of going, "This is how I've been told to mix. This are the parameters." Usually there'll be some sort of sound, dB meter that you usually see on top of the console, and they're testing it. 95 is quite often a volume conscious church number, as opposed to 110 for those of you that like rock and roll. Not that the two are mutually exclusive, but the point being is that it's actually a really hard gig, and they're really usually just trying to make the guitar fit in the space that's left over after they're doing the other things. So if they're mixing kick drum, snare, toms, bass, and keys first, it's no surprise that the end result is the guitar is just kind of like some little grain of salt that's there hanging out. You're part of the flavor, but you're not the meat. And that sort of understanding helps you just kind of begin to make sense of kind of like, okay, what are the decisions I need to make? And also then you kind of need to begin to go kind of like, well, then why does it sound the way it does in my in-ears, but it sounds bad front of house? Is it the PA? In which case, I would suggest bringing a couple of your favorite songs on your, dare I say, iPhone, that you've played off of your iPhone through your home stereo system, and then playing them through their PA. That's going to answer some of those questions. So some of it's an EQ thing, but some of it's just kind of going, I want to understand the sound system. What's missing here? And the great thing is, because you're a member of the worship team, you will almost always be afforded the ability to do that. And that's going to tell you a lot about that. The other thing I encourage you to do, which a good sound tech will do, is to walk the room and listen to these different things and really get to know that. That would be my advice. Okay. Oh, Tom. Hey, what's going on, Tom? Can I cut and paste this? There we go. Augsburg Deluxe. I love this. I will be. The comment was, have I looked into an amp sim like the Westminster Effects? A lot of Westminster Effects. Augsburg Deluxe. I'm cutting and pasting. The answer, thank you very much, Tom, appreciated, is most definitely will be. Okay. Matthew, I'm about to be there with you as well, because I'm speaking out for the night. I'm taking the wife out to dinner. That's right. Chris, absolutely. Matthew, good evening. If you've already excitadoed, look at that. Look at that. I love the camaraderie. I'm not sure what rant I was on at that point, but I received that. Thank you very much. Jason, hang on a second. All right, this looks like fun. All right, Jason Hostetler. Hello, Jason. I always am in constant communication with the sound tech during rehearsal and after to see if there's anything I can do to help him/her. I'm not correcting you. I'm just kind of making sure I'm correcting myself to make it easier. And this is one of the things, is that dialogue. This is why that's so important. Again, the resident sound expert from the congregation. Imagine, as the worship guitar player or bass player or whatever it is that may be you're doing that given week, pretty much all the feedback you get is like, your tone's too bright. You're too loud. I've heard the too loud enough time. Gary, what's going on? Thanks, Forrest. Hey, Gary. Good to see you. Gary, hey, Doug. In late, granddaughter had softball game. Boom. You got your priorities, and then cheered for football. Awesome. I'm going to be getting out of here in just a sec, heading for some dinner for the wife. But great to see you. But I'm grabbing a couple more of these here before I do that. And here you go. There we go. And this is important. Operative word. It's a lot easier to work this stuff out when there's a relationship. And I started to say, it's one thing to. I didn't finish it. I started to say it. One of the great things is if you can invite the sound tech into your home. When we used to have the worship team get-togethers here at my old church, I always made a point of inviting the sound techs because it made them feel part of the team. And the other thing is that they have a tendency to be a little bit more isolatory personalities. And being included doesn't mean that they don't want to hang out with people. It's just that their interpersonal need is a little bit different than, dare I say, a vocalist that, even if it seems like they don't, need some affirmation, right? And we all need affirmation. And most of the time, sound techs, all they hear is when something's wrong. Oh, they missed another cue, and everybody, of course, turns around and look at them. I was like, okay, yeah. The movie thing, like, oh, I missed the sound on the video. It's like, you knew there was a video. That's your flipping gig, right? It's kind of like, get the video cue. Like, that is kind of like, it's coming. That, but like, the presenter and the person doing announcements and all of that stuff, is why I believe in color coding the microphone so you know which mic is which. And all of a sudden, which mic is it? Well, when they're swapping mics back and forth on the platform and presenters are really going out of their way and quite often having no idea the fact that it's like, the sound tech actually doesn't know which mic you just switched with this other person. Like, and then they look at the sound tech with that look. It's like, well, you're the one switching mics up there. It's like, in any case, I digress. I'm talking about church life. We love church, and we love people. But pretty much all they hear is when something's bad, as opposed to like, hey, what can I do to help serve you? What can I do to help make your job better? What can I do? Also, such that I'm having this sort of experience that, given the hours I spend rehearsing in preparation for Sunday and or rehearsal, such that when I hear back on the live stream, I feel it's the representation of what I'm working so hard to do. Any reasonable human being will kind of go, that's a dialogue, right? And engaging people who all they hear is what they're doing wrong in a dialogue. Most of the time they're like, at least somebody's going to have a conversation as opposed to, volunteer me. Ugh. And yeah, again, there it is. There's the fruit. It has helped our relationship. And it also, it's really great to have a rapport with somebody who's going to tell you the truth. Justin, what's going on? Not sure if this happens to other folks, but my church sound techs mix like they're in their bedroom because they don't like listening to loud music. So that's kind of a pointy guitar there to be making that comment. Here's the thing is that I will. It was just going away, and I brought it back. Okay, so I will say this, and I know that you know this, but I'm going to say it for the sake of conversation, and then I'm going to jet out of here in just a moment. There is almost always a backstory to just about any church interaction, equation, and sometimes we're in on the plot, and sometimes we're not. The unfortunate thing is that sometimes there are some congregants, for better, worse, or in between. And honestly, I don't like having my ears blown out at a church service. Actually, my personal pet peeve is when pastors have enough dB in their mic and they start yelling. And it reaches a certain dB point. They're yelling in excitement or whatever it is. But I get to a certain point with a human voice above a certain decibel level where I hear it and it just makes me angry. It's a funny thing. I'm very aware of it. But after a certain decibel level, blah, 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 it's just like, and it's quite often when a pastor is very passionate about what they're doing. But basically, all I'm hearing, they're saying, and blah, 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 and, blah, 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 this message. And all I hear is, I am yelling at you, and I'm going, and I'm getting angry. It's just kind of like, so too loud is a thing, and I have my own version of it, just like the snare drum that's destroying the diction in the vocals and making it impossible to hear the guitar. Don't get me started. But sometimes there is a pastor that's very sensitive, like, I just don't want it that loud. Or we have some older congregants that may or may not be big on giving. that they don't want it that loud. And, sometimes there's a little bit more there. And I'm not all about, catering to the big donors, but let's really be honest. Is it your children's ministry, more important, the resourcing of your children's ministry, is an important outcome of positive outcomes and good, church giving relationships. It's not always like, hey, how can we get more money? It's more a matter of like, we have a need here. And if we don't figure out some ways to fill that need, and we're driving people that can help with that out the door because the sound's too loud, I guess we're going to turn the sound down a little bit. And, it's just the reality, right? But sometimes we don't know all those pieces. And unfortunately, the thing about churches, they're not always great at communicating some of the subtext that would be really helpful for people to know. And so with that said, actually, Jason, thanks for your insight. You kind of, that you brought it, it's just like having that conversation. And you said the R word. It's about relationship. These sound texts are like, they actually, here's the thing, just because they don't have a huge need for like camaraderie and like, we have this thing on the platform, ideally, that doesn't mean that they don't have that need for human engagement. It's just that they're just a little bit more solitary in their existence. But that doesn't mean that the inherent need to be treated like a human being, asked how they're doing, engaged with, invited out, and before, after, during, all of that stuff. They want to be included, and quite often, because they're more solitary personalities, sometimes they're a little socially awkward, or sometimes they're just not as comfortable as kind of being emotionally available because maybe they've been hurt, right? I mean, it's just like it's guitar players are guitar players. Oh, there we go. I'll take this Gary wise word. It's been my experience, so many sound techs aren't really sound techs, just church volunteers, and I'll put it in quotes, voluntolds. I love it when I get the chance to mix on Sundays and work with those people. Relationship is the name of that game, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, here's the thing. If we're really honest, many of the problems we have at church are because we don't seek relationship first. And we get caught up in the busyness of church, and we miss those opportunities because we're busy doing the stuff that needs to get done. And it's not going to change dramatically without a lot of prayer, a lot of intentionality, and some basic conversations. And that's why those worship team and sound and tech team gatherings off-site are so valuable. Because it just makes it easy for people to have those relationship building moments. And then when you're in relationship with people, you're not as volatile to somebody making an ask that feels as if it's critical. It's like, hey, can you make my guitar sound a little fuller? Oh, it sounds too bright. The snarky sound tech, and I've had snarky. But, out of the relationship, it gets better. And, and the other thing is that honestly, snarky sound techs are generally a sign of bad leadership. And sometimes it's bad leadership that's allowed snarkyism to stew for a period of time, where sometimes the snark is actually a result of those conversations that I alluded to that really should happen, that in the busyness of church sometimes don't. And people just kind of get left to stew with their emotions or bring something to somebody. It's like, that's really good. We're going to come back to that. And then somehow in the busyness stuff, it gets forgotten. They're like, for them, it's actually quite hard to kind of bring that conversation forward. And then to basically feel nothing ever happened. I guess they just blew me off. Because sometimes, especially the thing about sound techs, traditionally, they have a tendency to be actually every bit as sensitive as musicians. And it actually is their artistic and creative outlet. Even if they are volunteers that kind of ended up behind the desk, and like, okay, I'll do it. So, we need somebody to do it. So there's this unique volatility. And unfortunately, as churches, we do a very poor job. We do great jobs at a lot of things, but we don't do a great job of interpersonal relationships. I don't quite know why, but it's just kind of, we can do better. I actually do know why. It's because we're busy enough with trying to hold the thing up, such that it doesn't hit the ground. That we're trying to keep the holy stuff holy, and we're watching the ark, and sometimes we miss the people that we step on in the process of holding the ark up. And I think there's got to be a balance, and it sometimes just takes being a little bit more mindful of that. And the busyness is our problem. All right, we're going to close out in some prayer. Side note, hang on a second. Side note, taught my wife to mix and created a monster. She wants to mix everywhere we go. I love that. All right, awesome. First of all, again, thanks for everybody for hanging out. This is, again, the first Tuesday of every month, 6 p.m. Pacific. Great to see all the familiar faces and names and friends and all of that. Lord, I just lift the church up to you. Your bride, but we play a role in how the bride is presented to the world and presented to each other. And I just pray that we continue to grow in our mindfulness and continue to grow in our thoughtfulness and our consideration of others, caring for others as we would want to be cared for. And I just pray that the pastors would find new and engaging ways to pastor the teams and not just congregations. I pray that teams would learn to work together in greater harmony. Lord, your word calls for that. And, I just pray that in this crazy year, in this crazy season where people seem to want to embrace the things that divide us more than embrace the things that bring us together, that we don't bring that worldliness into the church with us, Lord. Rather, we bring love and harmony and, the unity, the things that you bring people together so that we can be united, even when we have differences in opinion, in bringing people into the church. And so, Lord, I just pray that you just fill everybody here and their friends and their family and their congregant friends, and even their non-congregant friends or their congregant not friends, because that happens in church too. Lord, I just pray for unity and harmony and joy for all. And we ask all of this in Jesus' mighty name. We said, amen. Well, thank you so much. What a privilege and what a lot of fun. It feels guilty to say it, but a lot of fun. Much love. Be blessed. I'll see you the first Tuesday in October at 6 p.m. Pacific. Until then, again, be blessed. Cheers.